Okay, thank you, Steve. I just wanted to bring you in on that because I want to go back to Ms. Aguiar to bring you back in. And the foundation schools stress that democratic involvement is vital in a school. Education is not just a question of teachers delivering better lessons. Some people might argue with that. The involvement of parents and the community in the children's education also matter. Isn't one of the goals of innovation in education to facilitate the involvement of families and other community members in their children's education? So, in other words, the other stakeholders.
Sim, a inovação deveria democratizar o ensino e
Innovation should make the teaching better, but it doesn't happen all the time. Because the teacher sometimes does not want to use technology, doesn't want to use what they have at their disposal in class. The teacher is used to every human being. To some teachers, it's very difficult to change. Many people don't want to change, and sometimes the teacher doesn't want to change. He's traditional, and he doesn't want to embrace, technology. It's difficult. So teachers should use technology, to get into the world of the student, but sometimes it's hard for teachers to do that because the teachers come from a different era, not a digital era, and students are basically digital natives, but the teacher isn't. And the teacher usually has this authoritarian position. He wants to transfer his knowledge, and sometimes so the teacher would have to change his attitude towards education, and it's hard sometimes. It's hard for adults to change. You'd have to change, to be more humble.
We'll talk about what sort of change in a moment. Anthony Salcito, isn't the truth that the full potential of technology won't really be realized within education systems until we change how students learn, as Professor Cheng has proposed, with students having more freedom to explore and learn, perhaps by themselves, for example?
I think that certainly connects to the last point. One of the reasons why teachers are resistant, where they are resistant of technology, is often not because of their familiarity with how to use the technology. It's because the core of the education model that's reinforced in classrooms and assessment all over the world is one of content delivery and assessment of how well students understand that content. So if the teacher is doing the heavy lifting of transferring content inside the brains of students, technology presents opposition for that core model. Because once a technology device is put in the hands of a student, the teacher has forever lost the ability to deliver content in a set way. They have to think differently about how information is flowed, as well as how students gather that information, think critically about it, assess different sorts of skills. And until we can have a conversation about the broader change, not only around the way in which information and collaboration, the way students interact every day with information, but how we assess and goal our schools to think more broadly about skills, not skills that just reinforce a content-driven path for education, but one that really reflects a 21st century learning path, collaboration, creative thinking, the way in which they think about society and each other. As students build those skills, content can certainly play a role, but will change the dynamics of education. When you do that, the role of teaching is elevated, and teachers are critical more than ever to support the technology exploration students are using to gather information, build skills, and have a deeper dialogue. But when you think about a traditional paradigm, many teachers will be resistant because it takes their core role out of the equation.
Yes, I would like to comment on this. We can see that there is a paradigm gap. It means that the mindset of our teacher, may not, update to the third wave, the new learning model. In the new learning model, we emphasize on our student continuous self-learning, have that kind of capacity. And also develop their multiple thinking, creativity, such that they can face the challenge in the future. But our existing system is still in the first wave or the second wave. It means that how we can fill up the gap between first way and second way and the third way. This is the challenge to our policymakers and education leaders.
And the biggest barriers, you think?
We do not have the full understanding of the paradigm shift. Right now, we emphasize a lot on the hardware innovation. We buy all kind of equipment, all kind of new initiative, but without a full picture. Why? In what rationale? Why this is relevant to the future? We have to answer this question first before we do this or that.
Into the future.
Thank you.
Exactly. Okay, let's go to José Gago. What is the role here? We heard about the third way there, popularized in Britain. What is the role of political leadership in creating the conditions for innovation in education? So is there a political leadership involved here? Does it ever work?
I think it's absolutely critical. It's either in education, or I'd like to restrict my answer to a specific field to be concrete. And I will speak about science education. Science education is critical nowadays, and it divides countries. It divides countries that apparently have the same curricula, but in some countries there is no experimental science education, and in other countries there is experimental science education. In some countries, the rapid transition and the social mobility out of poverty makes extremely difficult to bring in manual work into the classroom, because schooling and going to school is seen as something out of the traditional pattern of work. And that is extremely difficult to overcome, and is one of the main difficulties I see in the future in countries that have enormous resources now, that are trying to invest in education. Science education is probably key. Without political leadership at that level that breaks the divide, the social divide, that in fact makes this country feel that they are modern, but in fact they will just restrict themselves to the virtual world, to IT, yes,
right.
And I entirely agree with you, but not really measuring, not really training engineers or nurses or doctors that have to interact really with people, with matter, that have in fact to do work, manual work, the essence of work in education. And that applies for the teachers also.
Well, I asked about political will. Simon, do you think perhaps politicians might be risk averse here, as some teachers are?
Naturally, but I think the role of political leadership in reforming any nation's educational system is absolutely essential, critical, fundamental. If I can use the example of the project we're working on in Russia, we are building a fundamentally radical, I would use the word, graduate school of science and research in Russia that is divergent from the norm in Russian higher education. And naturally, one of the most entrenched systems in any country is the educational system. You can only have the political weight to overcome that if you have top-level decision makers behind the project, which we do, and that allows you to overcome the internal resistance among many groups who are resistant to that new system of education.